I just got back from my 5th Japan trip, and here's all the pro tips I wish I knew years ago. You're going to end up with a lot of loose change in Japan, so you're going to need something to hold them in. If you have one of those little bags that sunglasses come in, that'll work great, or something like a sling bag or a satchel is good too. If your life allows for it, try pre-adjusting to Japan time. You can really soften the blow of jet lag by changing your sleep schedule prior to departing to Japan. So for me, staying up late into the night actually helps me to get onto an early morning Japan schedule. This is the one time that staying up till 4 a.m. watching anime doesn't make you a degenerate weeb. Entering Japan used to require a bunch of paperwork just to get through immigration and customs, but now they have a website where you can pre-fill all your info and it generates a QR code for entry. I still see so many people getting off the plane and doing all the paperwork by hand. You can skip the headache in the line by just having your QR code ready. The Google Translate app has a camera mode and it's gotten super good. If a restaurant doesn't have an English menu, it'll translate it pretty decently, and it's a lifesaver for trying to use Japanese air conditioners and appliances. Getting an IC card is a must for Japan. IC cards are transportation cards that you can load with cash and tap on and off subways and buses. For the last 2 years, it's been tough to get one though due to chip shortages, and it was miserable buying each individual subway ticket every time I was at the station. At airports, they sell the Welcome Suica IC cards, but the downside is that those are only valid for 28 days. There are unregistered IC cards for sale at major train stations though, and they stay valid indefinitely, that I would recommend getting instead. These cards can be used at more than just the subway. Most vending machines accept them, as well as many shops and restaurants. So don't be afraid to load it up with cash when you get one. IC cards have regional design, so if you buy one in Tokyo, it'll look like one of these. But if you want to be unique, you can buy ones from other regions online and they still work everywhere. If you check eBay, you'll find designs from other parts of Japan, and even special event and commemorative ones. Just make sure it's not expired or super old, because they become invalid if they aren't used within 10 years. Use the ATMs at convenience stores in Japan to get yen. The exchange booths at the airport will advertise no fees and then hit you with a super bad exchange rate. The exchange vending machines will hit you with an even worse rate. Out of curiosity, I checked one of these machines and it was over 8% worse than the current rate on Google. That's like losing $8 for every $100 you put in. Much better to just pay a couple of dollars in fees at the ATM at a conveni. They accept tons of cards, even my local credit union debit card worked just fine. When withdrawing money at an ATM, you'll often see a prompt at the end asking if you want to be charged in yen or USD. Always select yen. In the fine print, you'll see they bake in 4% or more in fees for converting to USD. Just charge the yen to your bank, and the exchange rate they give you will almost always be better. The same goes for paying by card in restaurant and the machine asks you yen or USD. Always select yen. Optimal group size for visiting Japan is 1 to 4 people. Any larger and you might need to split up for meals because of the small restaurants. Double check your medications to make sure they're legal in Japan because they might not be, especially any stimulants. Your phone carrier probably won't give you high-speed data while you're in Japan, so you should get an eSIM. It's super easy to set up, you just purchase a plan and activate it on your phone. Alternatively, you could rent a Wi-Fi box if you have a group, but you have to carry it around and keep it charged. I think it's just way easier to just get an eSIM plan. Chris Broad recently started offering an eSIM service. It's apparently super good, but it's a little bit on the pricier side. Celia is a good budget option. It worked okay for me. The JR Rail Pass is overpriced now and is probably never worth it. You have to have an insane itinerary to make its high cost worth. Most local subways aren't even operated by JR, so it's mostly just useful for buying Shinkansen or bullet train tickets. But usually it's just going to cost less to purchase each individual ticket outright. Speaking of the Shinkansen, it's kind of silly, but you have to buy 2 different tickets for the bullet train, one base fare and one super express ticket. So be aware if you're buying tickets in person, but you can avoid this issue with my next tip. Buy your Shinkansen tickets online. This is the one time where it really helps to buy your train tickets in advance. The lines for the machines that sell these tickets at the station can be really long and frustrating, and all the good seats might be gone. I'll link the official site, or you can also buy them on Klook. Speaking of Klook, tickets for tons of attractions in Japan can be purchased on there. This is so much better than making a bunch of accounts on various Japanese websites just to get a ticket. On the Shinkansen, there's 2 types of tickets, reserved and unreserved. The reserved tickets have dedicated seat assignments. The unreserved is a free-for-all for train seating and are slightly cheaper. One time I bought an unreserved ticket on a busy train and I had to stand up for hours, so I would consider just getting a reserved seat. Here's how to get a Mount Fuji view on your bullet train. If you're heading south towards Kyoto or Osaka, book your seat on the right side of the train. If you're heading north towards Tokyo, book your seat on the left side. Leave one side of the escalator open because locals and salarymen are often in a rush to make their next connection or meeting, because being late in Japan is punishable by Sudoku. Japanese like their subways and trains quiet, so speak quietly if you have to talk. Also, if the trains are packed and you're by the door, locals will do this cool thing where they get out at each stop to let people off the subway, and then afterwards they file back in. When in doubt, just copy what the locals are doing. You don't need to speak any Japanese to travel Japan, but you should at least know these 2 words. Arigato gozaimasu is thank you, and sumimasen is excuse me / sorry. Knowing these 3 characters will be useful to you in Japan. This one means big and this one means small. You'll see them on the toilet handles indicating a large or a small flush. This one means stop, which will stop a bidet, or if you're driving, it'll indicate a stop sign. There's lots of great observation towers in Japan, and I'd recommend getting tickets in advance, especially if you come during a busy season. I visited in the off season and I still had issues getting Shibuya Sky tickets. You can buy tickets to all the popular viewing towers on Klook. Compare hotel prices on Google Maps. They list out all the different rates that are offered by different websites. They can vary wildly, so you'll likely overpay if you only use one app to book all of your hotels. Hotel rooms are small in Japan, but I would avoid the smallest ones. Booking apps will often list the size of the room in the listing, so I would avoid the 118 square foot or the 11 square meter rooms if you're not a solo traveler. You'll just feel claustrophobic with your travel partner and not enough space to open your luggage. You'll have plenty of time to be cramped in Japan, just at least have your room be the one place you aren't. Also with hotels, many have this exact same toilet shower combo unit. This exact one, and it's terrible and I hate it. Just avoid it if possible. When picking your hotel location, check your proximity to a subway station. Do a test navigation on your phone, do a couple destinations, and see how long the walk is. If you have to walk over 10 minutes to the station, I'd say it's too far and it's going to be really annoying. Here's some location ideas for staying in Tokyo depending on what you'll be doing the most. Team Utaku should try the Akihabara area. Team Drinking should stay in Shinjuku so you can stay out late at Golden Gai and not miss last train. Team Clubbing should try Shibuya, where all the biggest nightclubs are. If you're dragging your wife along and she's not a weeb, consider Ginza, where you find nice hotels, upscale shopping, and clean neighborhoods in the center of Tokyo. There's lots more, but there's just a few ideas to consider. If you're solo traveling, consider staying in a capsule hotel for cheap accommodation. For groups, or if you just want more space, check out Airbnbs. Airbnbs have really taken off in Japan in the past few years, and now there's a ton of options on there. This is especially useful if you're traveling with big groups and want to stay in the same place. Google Maps have made getting around Japan super easy. Just check the subway line and then your platform. Once you're on, check your final stop and get off there. One caveat is if a train pulls up to your platform and it's not close to when yours is supposed to arrive, be careful, it might be going elsewhere. You shouldn't deal with that too often, but just be aware. Last train is usually around midnight, so plan ahead or you might be in for a long walk home or an expensive taxi ride. Making sure you're boarding the right bus can be tricky, but most buses have a letter or number in the name, so look for that. If it's all in Japanese, try to focus on one character and match it up. Hopefully you've got your IC card so you can just tap on and off the bus, but if not, you'll print a ticket when you're boarding and it'll have a number on it. A sign at the front of the bus will list your number and how much the fare will be. Try to have exact change so you can quickly exit the bus. If you're going to a rural area or somewhere where you'll be riding the bus a lot, make sure you load up your IC card beforehand so you can avoid paying cash on the bus. Somehow the word okay is super baked into the Japanese language, so feel free to make use of it. If someone's out on the street and they're really persistent with wanting you to come into their establishment or bar, it might be a scam. You get tricked into their bar and they start bringing you drinks, and then when you go to pay, you find out you're on the hook for thousands of dollars. Then if you try to leave, they've got muscle to make sure you pay up. Scams aren't common in Tokyo, but they do exist, particularly in the red light and drinking areas, so just be aware and don't follow sketchy people. If you're going to rent a car in Japan, an international license is required. For United States, AAA is in charge of issuing these. It's really cheap and easy. You just walk into your local branch, and they'll take pictures of you and print you one for $20. There's no test or anything. Japan has a really great thrift store scene, and you should definitely check it out. Here's some of the most common secondhand stores in Japan. Book Off sells books, manga, video games, and some of the larger ones will have entire clothing and electronic sections. Mode Off is a clothing store. Hard Off is primary electronics, music equipment, and gaming consoles. Second Street does clothing, including high-end. When thrifting, some of my best finds were when I thrifted away from the city. The secondhand stores in the busy area of Tokyo tended to have less bargains and more tailored towards designer fashion. Try getting a little off the beaten path to score the good deals. Traveling in Japan entails a huge amount of walking, and it's easy to clear 10 or more miles a day if you're really getting after it. So because of this, I like to plan a vacation within my vacation to soothe my aching feet. A couple of days at a ryokan or a traditional Japanese inn with hot springs is a great way to break up a busy trip. If you do stay at a ryokan, you'll get a yukata, which is basically a casual kimono that translates literally to bathrobe. Yukata are worn at hot springs and around the property during your stay. When you put it on, make sure you do left side over right side, because right over left is only for the deceased. It will come with an obi or a sash. For a formal kimono, you would need to get this tied in a specific way, but for a yukata, don't worry about it too much. Just wrap it around you, tie a bow, and slide the bow to the back, and you're good to go. I started bringing an empty duffel bag in my luggage in anticipation of all the souvenirs and clothes I buy in Japan. I tend to pack light on my way out, because I know I'll end up getting a bunch of clothes at Uniqlo and 2nd Street anyways. Japan issued new bills in 2024, and many vending machines won't accept them now. You can tell which ones are which by the shiny portrait on the 1,000 yen bill and the security stripes on the 5 and 10,000 yen bills. You likely have a lot of Shinto shrines on your itinerary, and if you don't, you should add some. There isn't any super strict etiquette enforced on tourists, but if you want to enjoy the shrines by Japanese custom, here's how to do it. The torii gates are symbolic entrances to the sacred grounds around shrines. Give a slight bow as you approach them. Next, go to the water basin for purification. Left hand first, then right hand, and then rinse the ladle by holding it vertically. Traditionally, you rinse your mouth as well, but lately I've seen signs asking visitors not to. When you approach the shrine, toss a coin into the offering box. The amount here doesn't matter. If there's a bell, ring it a couple of times. After that, 2 deep bows, then 2 claps, and then you can offer a quick prayer before bowing once more before leaving. Shrines and temples will often offer an exclusive stamp for their particular location. If you want to commemorate your visits to all the temples and shrines you visit, grab a stamp book called Goshuin-cho at a gift shop if you're into that sort of thing. Sometimes you'll navigate somewhere and Google Maps will show you a route with tons of bus transfers, even if there's a nearby train or subway. If that happens, try moving your departure time around. Google Maps assumes you're trying to leave right that second and might send you on a bizarre 4-hour bus ride. Japanese people might not know what a bathroom or restroom is. They call it a toilet or toire in Japanese. Asking for the toilet might seem kind of crude in English, but it's normal in Japan. Tsukiji Market's probably the closest thing in Japan to a true tourist trap, with lots of overpriced food, lacking locals, and crowded with tourists, but it's still fun and you should go. There are hidden gems there if you know where to look. There's this tamago shop that locals line up for in the morning for egg on a stick that's called Tsukiji Yamacho. There's a restaurant that serves up super fresh sashimi bowls on the cheap called Taneichi. That shop was filled with locals. And there's this bar tucked away in the alley called Sanpachi Kiosk. The bartender there is super friendly and has great recommendations if you ask. Visa is king in Japan as far as credit cards go. MasterCard's pretty decent as well, but I've had a little bit of trouble paying with Amex and Discover. It rains a bunch in Japan, so at some point you'll probably need an umbrella. A lot of hotels will rent them out for free, or if not, you can get one for cheap at a konbini. Beware going to restaurants that went super viral online. They'll likely be packed and have long lines. Don't wait till you're super hungry if you're going to a place that got 300,000 likes on TikTok, because you might be waiting for hours. Some of my favorite meals in Japan were restaurants I randomly encountered in the street. Not every place you try needs to be listed in a guide, and you can avoid the lines at popular tourist spots. Don't be afraid of restaurants that might have like a 3-star rating on Google Maps, because Japanese people frequently don't leave 5-star reviews at places even if they really liked it. The reason being something about modesty, and 5 stars coming off isn't genuine. This is different from places like the USA, where we usually either leave 5 stars or 1 star. So don't be afraid to go to a restaurant in Japan with a rating of 3 stars on Google Maps. It's not a red flag like it would be elsewhere. Most restaurants in Japan are small and will quickly fill up during peak lunch and dinner times, leaving queues of people outside waiting to eat. If you want to avoid this, try eating between 2 and 4 p.m. for lunch and after 8 p.m. for dinner. Because of all the walking in Japan, make sure your footwear is comfortable. Running shoes are great, or at least slap some Dr. Scholl's in your sneakers. You might be awake way too early or way too late at some point during your trip due to jet lag. Here's some ideas of what to do until things finally start opening up at 9 or 10 a.m. Go to a konbini and get some drinks or snacks. Have a meal at a Japanese fast food joint that's open 24/7 like Sukiya or Yoshinoya. Get some ramen at Ichiran. Try catching a sunrise at a 24-hour park like Yoyogi or Odaiba. Go drunk spotting at Golden Gai when the bars are closing up. Or go to karaoke, as most are open late into the night or even 24/7. There's no Uber in Japan, but the Uber app will call you a taxi. Taxis aren't cheap in Japan though, so beware. Also, the taxi drivers have a lever that open the door for you, so don't try to open the door yourself. They might even be upset if you do this. Your small denomination coins tend to pile up and they aren't accepted at vending machines. Use them at a konbini that have automatic coin counting machines to easily spend them. All the cool admission tickets you'll accumulate in Japan make for great bookmarks. I've visited Japan in every season. Here are my pros and cons for each. In winter, there's world-class ski resorts that start opening, beautiful snowy landscapes in northern and mountainous areas. It's a great season to visit a hot spring, and there's fewer tourists in the city. Some of the cons are having to pack heavier for the cold, the greenery being out of bloom, and many businesses closing over the new year for holiday. Spring is considered one of the prettiest times to visit Japan. The cherry blossoms come into bloom, the weather's great, and the sightseeing is gorgeous. The downside is it's extremely crowded with both locals and tourists. The hotels become more expensive, and the restaurants get long lines to eat. With summer comes hiking season, and Mount Fuji opens to the public. There's tons of fun summer festivals as well, and summer clothing means you can pack light. However, Japan might get hotter than you think, with Tokyo getting over 100 degrees during the summer and also very humid. There's lots of insects. It's a busier tourist season than winter, but it's less busy than the spring. Autumn is a beautiful time to visit Japan with all the fall foliage. It's less busy than the spring, but it's still a popular tourist time. The weather is usually great during the fall. The downside is it's the second busiest season behind spring to visit Japan. Places like Kyoto become very crowded. Also, the weather can still be hot in the beginning of the season. Overall, autumn's my favorite season in Japan with all its beauty, and without the madness of sakura. The United States will let you bring home 1 liter of alcohol and 1 carton of cigarettes duty-free. You can typically buy more, but you'll have to declare it on your way home and pay duty or taxes on it. Look at your local restrictions to see what you can bring home duty-free if you plan on buying these items.